Lebanon marked its 76th Independence Day today. Official celebrations brought the country's top leaders together for the first time since a political unrest began. But it was the unofficial celebration that garnered all the attention. Protesters gathered at the location which traditionally held a military parade, many wondering why Lebanon's leadership don't want the country to change. For more on the story, we can go across to Beirut and speak to our correspondent, Leila Molana-Allen. Leila, good evening to you. What's the mood like been in Lebanon on the country's Independence Day?
It's been incredibly positive. What people decided to do today was, as you said, there is traditionally a military parade here, and that didn't happen today. They had a much smaller parade themselves near the military barracks, and instead people said, well, this is our country, so we're going to have a civilian parade. And what they did was they got people from different sectors of society to join together in the morning in their own camps and then walk down to Martyrs Square, where I am now, this central space that has hosted many of the protests. People from all walks of life came together. We had a mother's parade, a father's parade. We had accountants, we had lawyers, we had engineers, we had doctors. All people from all different walks of life showing what they contribute to Lebanese society, and people, as they would have done if there was a military parade, stood on the sidelines behind barriers and cheered them, threw flowers, said thank you for your contribution to the country. There were events planned all day. It was a highly organized day from this largely leaderless but very organized protest movement. They organized different talks. They had different events for people to come and attend. They baked a cake in the shape of the Lebanese flag, and as all those people came together, they then came into the center of town to celebrate here, wave their flags, and there was music played, there was much celebration. One of the groups that came was the Lebanese diaspora. People have been, over the last few weeks since these protests started, flying back from the countries they live in now, Lebanese people, to come and share their voice in the protest movement. But this weekend, there was a large drive with help from cut-price flights to try and get as many people back as possible. And I was at the airport early today. As many of these people arrived, they cheered as they came. They said, thank you for coming back to your country. And they had a cavalcade of buses that came down to the protests here, and they then marched the Lebanese diaspora, and they held their luggage, suitcases with them, symbolic of saying, we have been forced to leave this country. That's one of the main gripes of protesters here. Lebanese young people feeling they have no opportunity but to leave this country to search for other opportunities, leaving their families and the life they love, the country they love behind. And they chanted, toot, 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 beep, 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 a car beeping, we are coming back to Beirut. They want to come back. They want to rebuild their lives here. They hope that the situation will improve with what protesters are calling for. So very, very positive. And across the country, similar events, people taking to the streets, waving their flags and saying, we are united for the first time in such a long time. That's what we've seen in these protests. People coming together across sectarian divides, criticizing all politicians, saying the whole of the political class, the people who have represented us for the last 30 years since the end of the Civil War, they do not represent us. We need an entirely new governmental system, and we are united together under this one Lebanese flag. We're Lebanese above all else, and that's what they were celebrating today.
Leila, speaking about finding a new system in the country, are we any closer to finding a way out of this crisis? Because the one person who was suggested as Prime Minister withdrew last week.
Yes, so Prime Minister Saad Hariri resigned on October 29th, nearly a month ago now, and there's been very little movement. There was this brief move towards nominating Mohammad Safadi, who is a very similar character to caretaker Prime Minister Saad Hariri, who is still running the government until a new government can be elected. He is also a billionaire. He's from Tripoli in the north. By the constitution, the Prime Minister must be a Sunni, but he has business holdings in Saudi Arabia, very close relationship with the Saudi Arabian royal family. And many people, when that announcement was made, said, he's exactly the same. You are nominating somebody who's just like the person who just left. The government trying to say, well, because he's a businessman, he doesn't have political interest, but people saying that's not the case. We're calling for something entirely new. And just a day later, after the announcement that he would be nominated, Mr. Safadi stepped forward and said, I cannot form the kind of government you want, and I'm withdrawing my name. Now, the question here, what protesters have been calling for, is a technocratic government. They want people entirely separate from the current political elite to come in and run the country. One of the most urgent things they need to fix is the economic crisis here, which has not been caused by these protests, which has been created for a long time and worsening for a long time, and really started to slide a few weeks before the protests here began. There's been a dollar peg here for many years, for 22 years, at the same same rate, which has helped to artificially boost the economy. But the IMF estimates that the currency here, the lira, is actually overvalued by 50%. Many people suffering as a result. Trade cannot continue. Everybody worried about that, and no government to lead them, and no sign of a new prime minister or a new government. People very dissatisfied.
Leila, thank you very much for the update. Leila, Molana-Allen reporting there from Beirut.